hello. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to use my phone as a crib sheet. I'm not doing my emails, I promise. So, I'm Kate Saxon, and I'm a director, and I direct games. Games have included The Witcher with the lovely Doug, Alien Isolation, Mafia 3, some Chinese room games, like Still Wakes the Deep that just came out recently. And I've worked with all these 4 lovely people. And they're going to be talking to you about their experience in games and their own mental well-being in the games industry. So let me introduce them all first. So we have Doug Cockle over there, who's best known probably for his turn as Geralt in the ever-wonderful The Witcher 1, 2 and 3, the whole lot. And also an anime project that Netflix have made recently in which he reprised his role of Geralt with George Clooney and Adam Sandler, no less.
Oh, no. No? They're not in the anime. They're not in the Witcher anime. No, it's a whole different thing.
They're not in that, that's wrong.
Oh, that was a different project.
That was a different project.
With George Clooney and
different project.
I don't want to think
guys,
that George Clooney and Adam Sandler are in The Witcher now. That would be
okay,
misleading.
that's wrong. So he also did Nightingale in Alan Wake 2 and also Baal in Baldur's Gate 3. So on to Rob Gilbert, who is working on a game with me at the moment, but we cannot say what it is. And he's also known for other games such as Ghost Recon Breakpoint, as Royce in Cyberpunk, and for Crossfire. We have Jessica Hayles. And Jess spent some time in Canada recently, and I think you started your games work there, did you?
No.
Oh, before that. Before that. So particular credits are Natsai Onai and other characters in Hogwarts Legacy, Jordan Wright in Madden NFL 22, and Tisha Reed in Dead Island 2. And then last but not least, we have the wonderful Alix Wilton Regan.
Hello.
Known for roles such as Aya or Aminet in Assassin's Creed Origins, Ethelia in the newly released Elder Scrolls Online. I think it came out yesterday.
It did come out yesterday.
Yeah. And the Inquisitor in Dragon's Age Inquisition. Also Alt in Cyberpunk, which actually I cast Alix in, but wasn't director on that one. I was on something else. So I'm going to kick off with a fairly big question to start us off with, but obviously the point of this day being mental well-being, mental health in our industry. So in your careers, in your journeys so far, could you talk a little bit about the impact of the job on your mental well-being? Anybody want to kick us off with that? Small nugget.
I'm happy to start. I think mental well-being within our industry and for us as actors and voice actors is, for me, pretty much everything. I often say to young actors, keeping your mental health and well-being the best is about longevity. And I think without any, we probably all have great teams behind us, but we are the HR department. We have to do everything. So I work on my mental well-being and physical well-being, but the two tie in every single day. And I think I talk a lot about being match fit, so that anytime I go into a studio that I can be in the best place, which is always relaxation, to play. And so there is so much that I do, that I put money towards, nearly every single day, that can affect the work, and is the only way that I can do the best work, in my opinion.
And I think when I started out, when people would say match fit, I often thought that meant like physically at the top of your game, like you've been to the gym every single day because you're an actor and you've got to be like gorgeous and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it involves lying on the couch and watching Netflix and doing nothing else, actually, so that you're completely relaxed for your big, 10-hour PCAP day the next day, for example. Don't you think? It's not actually just about,
No, certainly not.
Yeah.
Just physical. It's about keeping yourself loved and supported and healthy and whole, and also a person, not just an actor. But without it, I don't think I would be able to go into studios and be so free. I also think because a lot of our work is imagination and relationships and characters and backstories, and so when you have a knowing of all of that, you use it on yourself. So we tend to often be overthinkers or very aware of our own stuff, especially to do with what's inside our minds. So all of that stuff, I think one probably has to do it more than potentially other industries, because we know all the intricacies.
I think for me, one of the things that has taken a long time to get used to, and I had to talk to myself about this before when I was a younger performer, is just dealing with rejection. As a freelancer, I'm sure we've got freelancers here who, you know, you're applying for jobs, you're looking for work all the time, you know exactly what I'm talking about, you know, and you know, that constant butting your head up against the rejection wall can give a real hit to your ego, to your self-esteem, to your feeling of value in the industry and everything. So I think that for me, that's one of the things that I've learned to deal with much better, and to remind myself that rejection doesn't mean that, you know, you're a poor performer or you're bad at your job or anything like that. You just may not be right for this particular job. But that can be easy to not be consciously doing for yourself, to be an advocate for yourself and say, I know I'm good, I know I'm valuable, this one didn't work out, what's the next one?
I suppose in terms of like today, or what we're talking about today, it seems like most people, there aren't many. Are there any actors in here? Okay, so there are a few actors in here. So you're sort of aware of the day-to-day, I couldn't swear, how difficult it can be. But I suppose for everyone else, I think just in terms of what the experience is, just keep in mind that for the most part, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think for the most part, there is something wrong with you if you do this for a job. Like, and I know that we talk about that as a kind of like, oh, like a rock star renegade, like I'm cool, I'm not normal and everything. And yeah, there's that side of it. But I genuinely mean, if you want to do this with your life, I think you are a bit twisted, and there's something wrong with you, something that you need, whether it's the approval of the rejection, whether it is whatever. So when you're dealing with actors, when you're dealing with people who commit their life to having zero security, having to act like someone else to gain approval, like a full awareness that they may be jeopardizing the future of their life and their ability to have a family or own property or anything like this, to play a bit of pretend sometimes. I don't like saying, like, be soft with actors, be gentle with artistic people. I think you just treat them like human beings. But just be aware that even when we're confident, even when we're putting money and time and all this process into having this lovely thing that protects us and makes us seem, you know, like powerful and strong, and we're having to project confidence, it's an incredibly vulnerable thing to do, to walk into a room full of people as an adult amongst other adults. And then someone goes, go, and you go, hello, sir. It's stupid. Like, it is stupid. And so support us in that. Sometimes you walk out of a job and you think, what is my life? Like, what am I doing with myself? But it's a worthy thing that we do, you know, telling these stories. But I do think that toll on your mental health, I think, is often underappreciated or not thought about enough, because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say that. It's embarrassing to be like, I'm a bit vulnerable. Why? Well, you asked for this. And it's like, yeah, I know, but it's weird. It's hard.
You quite often hear like, oh, it's show business. It's not show friends. It's show business. It's not show friends. Yeah, but we're artists. We're creatives. We didn't get into this industry to do our tax returns and find out how to file a VAT, whatever. Do you know what I mean? And so we are vulnerable, and they want us to be vulnerable and artistic and creative. So nurture, support your baby plants to grow.
You talk to anyone that isn't a performer and I have to give a presentation for work, that's their only thing that they're thinking about for like that whole quarter of their job. And they're all supported, and they get given a special room and a little table, and everybody has to sit quietly and nicely. For us, it's like, come, hurry up.
What about yes and no's? Because obviously in the industry, in terms of the broader industry of actors, there's been a lot over the last couple of years of give us a yes or no when you've either got, obviously if you get the job, you get told. If you haven't got the job, do you get told? Do you get that ever in the video games casting industry? And would you like to have it if you don't?
You don't usually get a no, you haven't got the job. You just don't hear anything.
Yeah.
You just see an advert
which has its
for
own
the game.
Yeah, you see an advert for the game. I auditioned for that role, and somebody else got it.
Would you like that to be something that changes?
I think that's really individual.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's got their reasonings for yes and no. Personally, no.
also might depend on the game, on the role, how far you go. Like if you've done, when I did Assassin's Creed, I think I had to do 4 auditions and a chem test before I got offered the job. At that point, I think had I not been offered the job, I think, yes, it would be polite to say something. But I got the job, so that was all right.
Actually, maybe when you get down to all the way down to chemistry tests,
or huge recalls, I think.
It'd be good if there was a standardised way that you could check.
I suppose there's no reason why the industry shouldn't let the agents know, and then the agent can know whether their particular client wants to hear or not.
Yeah.
Sure.
Could be a thing.
Depending on game size and role.
Yeah, do you know, the yes-no thing goes further than just the initial audition as well. Kate, I'm sorry, I hope I don't throw you under the bus on this. It's a good story.
Okay.
It's a good story. I was originally cast in Witcher 1, and then between Witcher 1 and 2, the CD Projekt Red, the developer, decided to go in a whole different direction for a lot of reasons, a lot of valid business reasons and creative reasons. And I heard through the grapevine that they were casting for Geralt of Rivia. And I just heard this through a friend. And so my immediate reaction was, oh crap, I must have sucked or something. I must have been really bad, or, my immediate reaction was, I wasn't good enough. And then I kind of got myself together and I went, I don't know why they're doing this. So I sent a text to somebody from CD Projekt who I knew, and I just said, hey, I'd be happy to throw my hat in the ring again, love to audition again, loved playing the character, blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, let me get back to you. And the story I heard was that they then went to Kate, who was casting The Witcher 2, and said, hey, do you want to go back and revisit this Doug Cockle guy who voiced Geralt the first time around? And they did, and she did, and the story I heard was, she said, he's actually really good. Let's just cast him again. But the moral of this story is not how great Kate was to go back and do that, but it was also, the point is, sometimes the no can feel really big. It's not just the first time you audition. For me, that was me having to gather myself again and go, am I good enough? Do I believe I should be able to do this? And I think, particularly as freelancers, that can be a really scary position to be in. And so what I always want to say to people is just believe in yourself, believe in yourself. If you think you're good enough, put yourself forward again. There is no harm in putting yourself into the play again, in throwing your hat into the ring again. All they can do is say no.
And I have come across that quite often in games, actually, where I might have been working on a game for a long time, and then the game might go in a very different direction, and the developers want to change a character quite fundamentally, and therefore don't think that actor is necessarily the right person anymore, or might not be. So if that happens, I always say to them, well, make sure you keep the original actor in the loop, and that I can talk to the actor and make sure they know exactly what's going on. Full disclosure, this is what's going on, and you will still be absolutely in the loop. They may feel it's gone too far a different direction, but you absolutely should be, front and centre at still trying to retain that role if they feel it is something that can still suit you. So I think, what we're all saying really is honesty and
consideration.
Yeah, including the actors. So the next thing I wanted to go on to, obviously NDAs in games, huge thing, really stringent NDAs. Oh, can I say that? So that obviously affects what we can send out to the performers, certainly ahead of auditions, and then possibly beyond that. But as performers, do you feel that you get the info that you need, and is there any extra support in that you could suggest?
My honest view on it is, if you've signed an NDA, I really would like developers to trust us with telling us this is the new Assassin's Creed, because that's a whole tone, that's a whole vibe. This is the new Mass Effect, that's a whole tone, that's a whole vibe. And I know there's people in the audience who are more experienced in the finer parts of this from the other side of the work, but it's just helpful because everything has its own energy and its own genre and its own vibe, and it gets a bit. I'm doing a game at the moment where it is so heavily code-named that the scripts we are given for the PCAP sessions are still code-named. So I have to go to set and remember, Kate, your character's not actually John, it's actually Jacob. But on my script, it says John. And then I get into the scene, I'm like, Jacob? You know, it's really, I think at some point that you have to be able to really trust that we don't want to put ourselves in the shit. We don't want to break our NDA, pardon for swearing, but we don't. You know, there's no vested interest in us for leaking anything. Not really. The more you can bring us into the fold and trust us and empower us, that's what it's about. It's about empowerment, the better a job we can do for you. That's how I view it, personally speaking.
Yeah, good. Anything else?
Especially, for me, the main thing is in auditioning, like when you're meeting for a project and you've got no clue. And I think the prep or the reference points for devs and for other people is different than what we need. And so I think this goes across auditions in general, but I understand if you can't give information about the game, but as much analogous reference material as you can deliver is so helpful. Like, you know, if you know, I'm struggling to think of a good example, but,
like character art and things like that.
Character art, explain to me, like, what cog in the story is this person? You know, if I'm auditioning for Cyberpunk, you know, maybe you want to tell me, yeah, I would take a look at stuff like, you know, Tank Girl in the 90s and maybe a little bit of Blade Runner and maybe a little bit, you know, and think about tabletop games and, you know, open world. Like, tell me, am I first person? Am I third person? Like, and a lot of times you do get that information, but I think when it comes down to character stuff, that is when it's really important. I find that I get a lot of information about vocal tone, which again is super useful. But if I don't know this person's motivations and, more importantly, what you want the player to think of that character. This person is like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. Okay, now that's a solid reference for me. Smooth, political, good at talking, but ultimately untrustworthy, but unfortunately trusted by a lot of our protagonists, and that causes dramatic tension. Fantastic, I can work with that. If you say to me, he's a little bit wily, I've got no idea what that is. So yeah, as specific as you can make it, not just the vocal tone, not necessarily what they look like, but what cog am I in the story? What is my goal? What is my story goal to achieve here? You know.
Anything else, anyone? No?
Do you want me to mention the good practice thing that I talked about? Or,
Sure, go ahead.
One of the things with NDAs that all of the actors experience is we don't know what to say when. We actually really, really want to help the developers. We want the game to go out there and be a big bang. We want people to love it and to look forward to it and to anticipate it. But we're often told nothing. I had a really good experience recently with the game, and it was Alan Wake 2. And we signed these big NDAs that, said don't talk about anything. But then the marketing team kept us informed all the way through, right through development, to say, don't say anything at all until this point. At this point, you can then say you're in the game. Then at this point, you can tell us, you can start to talk about the behind the scenes. They gave us talking points on paper that we could follow. And then we could be part of the team, part of the publicity and marketing team, actively part of it, rather than just suddenly going, is that game out yet? Is it ever coming out?
Yeah.
Oh, it came out 3 years ago. Oh, okay, great. It's often we're so in the dark, and we can help you, the developer, to hype up your game if you just make us part of that team.
Include us. Yeah. Just two things on that point. I think, yeah, for Elder Scrolls, I got sent a ton of material on Friday. So text that they wanted me to post, graphics of the game, the character, all that kind of stuff, so we can post it. So we're all on brand, we're all on message, we're really empowered. The other thing is, if you recast our character or you cut the character, please tell us, so that when the game comes up, we don't go, oh, I'm in that. What? Like, just tell us. Just tell our agents, and they can politely let us know that, again, not to take it personally, or maybe take it very personally, but, if they've recast someone, 30 years older than me from a totally different geographical region, it's fine, but just tell me, so I don't go all guns blazing on the social media and...
Well, and also so that your expectation is realistic. You don't have that crash.
Well, that's the mental health part, right?
Yeah.
Is about including us, empowering us, making us part of the family and part of the team.
Because it might even just be story changes. It
might
might
have
even
nothing
be
to
as
do
much
with you.
as being recast. It might just be, oh, the story went in this direction, because a lot of it is being rewrote as we know. So yeah, the more we know.
There's something else I'd love to see, because obviously, not only for the performance, but as a director, I never get the whole script, or very rarely, only if it's a very short game, well, I have the whole script ahead of time, and the actors certainly don't. So I would love to see in the industry some kind of briefing doc on the sort of content we're expecting, because, you know, there could be violence of different levels. There's very likely going to be violence. There could be sexism, there could be racism, there could be sexual content. Any of these things that might be a valid part of the game story, but sometimes we won't know that they're coming. And I think it would be great if there could be some kind of briefing doc at casting stage, so that the creatives coming on board have agency about whether they are happy to play a character that may have some tricky or challenging things to play. So that maybe is something else.
I really agree with that. I really agree with that.
And I think that's the way to get the best work out of people as well, because when you're not thrown something in the booth that you then have a reaction to, but have to be your most relaxed and being in character. But and a lot of the time as well, it can take a little while to figure out how you feel about something. And if that's going on in your head whilst you're still recording, then that's they're clashing. So
so that leads me on, and sorry, Jess. Sorry. So that would lead me on to performance space. Once you're in the performance space, whether that be the voice booth or the performance capture stage, what are the best tools? What are the most productive things for your mental well-being when you're on the job? Best practices.
I think, like, basic level, like, and in terms of inclusivity, nobody should have to ask for something that is their basic right and need. That should be provided for and thought through at every stage for various people, if that makes sense.
Like the toilet break?
Toilet breaks. Toilet breaks, prayer breaks, like whatever it may be, that all those things are thought through and that everybody's on board with them, and then if they're needed, and then they can be offered, and then again, it's just like, oh, I didn't have to think about that, which gives me more brain space for character.
Like, you know, I would like to be told if I have a sex scene coming up. I think that's really basic, actually. And, you know, when I've had to do them for, like, you know, different games, you go into the booth, they're like, right, so today, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, so room full of men on the other side of the glass. You will all turn your chairs around, thank you very much, apart from the engineer, and you will turn off all the lights in your studio and all the, you know, because I don't want them, like, looking at me be like, bit more, Alix? Yeah, touch more. Okay, make it longer. That's it. Yeah. I mean, it's awkward, right? It is awkward. And I've never had a sex scene directed by a woman. Interesting, just saying. But yeah, tell us if we've got a sex scene coming up. It's so strange, you know, to not be told that.
Would you welcome intimacy coordinators in the...
On a PCAP stage, yes, definitely. I think if we were shooting Assassin's Creed Origins today, of which there was, you know, quite a lot of sexual content, and it just so happened that Abu and I became best friends and were super communicative with each other. But with any other different actor, it wouldn't have worked. And I think if they were doing it today, there would definitely be an intimacy coordinator, which neither he nor I would say no to. Does that make sense? If they're going to enhance the space and make us feel safer, great, yeah.
What about other things, other tools that you wish every game's recording was like this, or not like that?
I think there's some basic things just in terms of, especially if I'm working with Kate, and Kate and I have worked together before, we've got a shared language, the engineer's there, they're speaking, but if somebody from the company is going to be in the room, like, obviously introduce yourself, explain to me what your role is and why you are in this session. Is it just because you happen to be in town? Is it because there's specific story points that you want to look at? Is there a specific way that you like to work? Are you going to say to me, what I want you to do is I want to do exactly what's on the page. Let's run that a couple of times. Then I'll hear your thoughts, we'll do that, and then I'll give you some notes and we'll do that. So now I'm prepped so that as I'm going through, I'm not surprised by something and going, oh, I'm really screwing this up because the session's moving in this direction or something, something like that. I know oftentimes reasoning for notes or reasoning for changes is shrouded in kind of like mystery, but as transparent as people can be about that, so that, again, similar to what Jess was saying, you're not thinking, okay, is this trying to get around something I'm doing wrong that no one's telling me, or just as much transparency as possible. And this is such a simple one, but tell me if you want me to sit down or stand up. Tell me if you want me to sit down or stand up, because there's always a chair in there, and I'm like, can I sit down?
I always want you to stand up.
Yeah, I always stand up.
I very rarely want an actor to sit down in the booth.
Yeah.
But sometimes we'll let them.
But I was going to say also, and this is kind of a question for you, I guess, is like, I feel when I'm the lead in a video game, and you know you're going to be working on it for months or years, right? You could be working on it for years. I always feel like it's really important for the actors and the director to have the common language, but also for us to feel empowered to feed back to the director if there's something that really helps us. Like, my dyslexic brain cannot cope with someone if I say, I don't know, vices for change, vices for change. And if someone comes and goes, no, you keep saying vices, you keep saying vices, you say voices, don't say vices, vice is wrong. All my brain hears is vices, because you said it 5 times. This is not a you note, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I'm working with someone, my dyslexic brain can only focus on the positive change that you want to hear in the delivery or in the voice or in the performance. So I think being able to work with directors that I can feed that back to, and they're like, oh, cool, got it, say no more, we can totally incorporate that. It's just so generous of directors when they're open to that.
For sure.
I think it's really important for actors to say, this is how I love to work. There's an actress I've been working on a game with recently, and she likes to have the lights off at all times, because that strange thing of the world being so immersive, she always felt like she couldn't go to all these extraordinary places in this bright voice booth. It just felt alien to her. So she always wanted the lights off. She always wanted more regular breaks so she could have little food pick-me-ups. And these were particular things that she asked for early on. And so, great, yeah, and that's what we did. So as you say, the saying what one might want and then making sure that's followed is great. Any other things, Doug, you wanted to add about the particular, once you're in session, what's...
I agree with everything else that's been said. I think one of the things that I have experienced, not very often, but it has happened occasionally, and just something to be aware of as a developer, only have the people who absolutely need to be in the session in the session. I've been in a few sessions where, you know, the 3 writers, 2 artistic directors, a producer, the CEO of the company, they're all either on a call or in the room, and then they all argue with the director. And they all have their own ideas about what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And as the actor, all this does is make you not feel very playful. It makes you feel like you can't be vulnerable, like you can't give your best work. So if you feel that the writer needs to be present, absolutely, make them present. But as Rob said, you know, make their role clear. What are they doing? And give the director their space to do their work, because that's what they're there to do. If the writer's taking on the job of the director, then you're going to get, I mean, maybe you get good stuff, maybe you won't, but that's what the director is there to do, to help the actor feel comfortable enough to play and be vulnerable and give you the performance that you need.
I think you're right. I think best practice I've certainly come across in games is when the devs have all, those people in the team that all need to have a voice in what they want from those performances, have had those conversations before the recording day, and they've made their decisions, and they've probably only sent 1 representative to the session to make sure those decisions are imparted and feed in the context and all those things that they're looking for. And then, as you say, let the director and performer do their job. Another thing that I think is important is to trust that an actor will want to explore and play a little bit and not to want immediate results. I often find, as a director in video games, I will hear from the client what they want and often say to the client, I'm going to get what you want. I won't necessarily use the phrasing and the words that you just used. I'll probably use very, very different phrasing because I want to turn that into intentions, playable intentions, actions that the actor can use, but that will give you what you want. And I think it, as you say, in a way, it's trust the director to be, the performance director's there for a reason, because they're going to be able to speak in that language of the performer, and trust the performer to get there, but also let them play. You know, the whole wonderful thing about performance for me is playing and trying and failing and finding. So I guess not panicking if something might take a little longer sometimes, and other things might land very quickly.
I think what Doug's saying is really important about that, a little bit of protecting the space. But I also think there's something about transparency. If there's a question about a character and you've had a long discussion or there's been a last-minute session, everybody doesn't need to be in the room. But sometimes as the actor, I want to know that. I want to know, let's do a couple of takes, and if it's not going, I'll tell you what, Rob, we've been having this conversation about whether this character should be so like this or should be so like this. Is there anything you can contribute to that discussion? Like, this is the discussion we're having. Where are you at on that? And then my instinct is always to go, okay, well, let me do both sides of the spectrum, and then you can figure out what you like from me. Whereas if I don't know and you're just kind of going, no, all right, I'm going to have to call them, you're just thinking, well, I'm going to get fired.
Yeah.
And that's when it can come out, in the recording that it's about playing. So whether that be from direction or some way that the character's going at the time, or at the beginning of the session, I would love to have, like, and would happily ask for it, kind of even if it's just a 10 minutes of playing with some of the, you've got the kind of script and the lines, what are the ones that come out, jump out at you to start with, and scenarios, and going back over what we do know, all the information that we have gone, but then by 50, like we almost start 10, 15 minutes in, and you're like, ooh, it's match fit again. You've kind of got the blood flowing of that character.
Do you know something I've advocated for before, and it ties in with what you're talking about, is possibly, because we as actors come in quite late in the process very often, where a lot of decisions have been made, we've had no input into these, so we become interpretive artists, which is fine, but compared to in film and television, where you get less of this, but certainly in theater, where you get a rehearsal process of some kind, where you get to know the character, you get to understand them a little bit in the context within which they're going to be placed. As a developer, if you can, and I would say that I know budgets are tight, but if you want to get the best performance as quickly as possible, involve your actors as soon as you possibly can. Even if it's only for, you have 3 scenes that are written, you've got it cast, get them together in a room to play with these characters and understand them a little bit, embody them a little bit before they get in front of a microphone. I can pretty much guarantee you, if you give them that time, 3 hours with the performance director in a room to play with the script before you even start recording, you'll probably get better performances in a slightly quicker time, because we'll have that bit of prep.
And it often inspires writers further.
Yeah.
But when we've been in situations like that, rarely, but when I have, writers come away going, I've got so many ideas, I'm buzzing, and the character could do this and that, and within the confines of the script, how can we enrich the storytelling? So I really think it's a positive all-round rehearsal.
And I don't know, I love improvisation. I don't know if everybody does, but that's, most of us are good at that.
Yeah.
And what about, Alix, obviously you talked a little bit about uncomfortable content with the sex scenes.
Yeah.
Are there other, because obviously games often do have quite challenging subject matters, are there any other examples of uncomfortable content or things, and perhaps some good practices that you've experienced? I think, Doug, you said you've had a good practice experience on that front.
Yeah, well, several things. Just going back to the, intimate content kind of thing, on Alan Wake 2, I was told right from the very first audition that this character was going to be naked, and that they may ask me to perform in a naked or mostly naked state. So I knew right from the beginning what I was getting into, and I was okay with that. I've never been a particularly modest person, but I knew what I was getting into, and in the end it wasn't nearly as bad as they told me it might be. But having that advance warning was great. But also, I remember on Witcher 3, I came into the studio one day, and Kate came and grabbed me from the lobby, and she took me in, and James, our engineer, was in there. She said, I just want to share with you this storyline that we're supposed to record today, and see if you're comfortable with it, because me and James read it, and we were like, So I looked over it with them, and we all agreed that it was content that we thought was not only not comfortable to make, but also could potentially damage the game when it came to actual reviews and censorship and various other things. So we called the developer up and said, we have concerns about this. And the end result was they rewrote the whole quest line. They went, okay, you know, if all 3 people who are recording this are saying this is a bit of a hot poker, we shouldn't touch it, then maybe we should listen to them. So that was an example of good practice, I think, where the content, we thought, you know, we flagged it up as, we think this might be too hot for your audiences. And they agreed.
I think there's also something that Jess said at the beginning, which is we don't have HR departments. You know, we're actors by ourselves, kind of going out there doing the job. So I think in particular, the big studios, you know, that cast the games, get you in, they get Kate in to direct it, they get us in to act it, they've got all these producers. I do feel like the studios have to be very aware of potentially unpleasant situations that are arising. And I did have an incident, it's going back, this is definitely pre-Me Too. And it was the creative director of the game was hitting on me at first in like it was on PCAP stage, by the way. So if anyone doesn't know, that's performance capture suits. So you're in these really like skin tight black lycra suits. I was the only woman. And he was hitting on me at first like in that jokey brush it off kind of way. And then in a way where the male actors were going, dude, this is not cool. Like this is, and actually saying to him like, mate, chill it down a bit. Anyway, my agent got involved and wrote to the head of the studio that had cast this project. And there's a very senior woman there who brilliantly stepped in and issued a memo to all of their clients, so she handled it very well, that it went out just saying, you know, we have a duty of care towards the actors that we call in, and we pass that baton on to you, expecting the utmost professionalism and not infringing on performers' time outside of work, or their physical space when they're in the volume, or when they're in the booth. And I think that the more care and compassion that people higher up the chain can show us guys, because we are actually kind of at the bottom of the food chain in a way. We can have power in terms of our status on a video game, but we're often the last people called in. We don't know what the content is. You know, we're in a black cat suit. So whatever they can do is great. You know, there's an app now that's released called Call It, and it's mainly for film and TV, but you can do it for like voiceover, PCAP, where you can report stuff anonymously. Yeah. But that didn't exist pre-Me Too.
Delith is here.
Delith here? Delith
That's over there. So if anybody wants
she
to
made the app.
discuss with Delith, this lady waving, she made the app and absolutely has opened it up to the video game world as well. So do grab her after the session if you would like to find out more about that. Another good practice thing that I think is worth sharing, when I directed Mafia 3, we discussed in great detail how we'd go about the performance capture rehearsals, because there was a lot of racism in that story, and they felt that it was important to make it authentic. Therefore, they knew it'd be very challenging for the actors to deal with. So we came up with lots of strategies and rules. So we always had at least a day's rehearsal for every day of performance capture. We always had table reads first. We always made sure that there was a very small team from the developers there, and that they had briefed the representatives from the developers that were going to be there at rehearsal. And when we were dealing with racist scenes, scenes that tackled racism, I should say, or expressed racist thoughts, that there was no improvising by any actors, that we would have a pre-brief before the scene and a post-brief after the scene. And we'd make sure there was nothing improvised, and that everybody could stop if they felt unsafe in any way, shape or form. And I think those kind of systems are so important to make actors feel like they're safe in that space that we are asking them to enter into with us. So we should wrap it up soon. So I wanted to see if there were any questions that anybody had in the audience, because we've got 3 minutes, so perhaps it's a good time to open up to questions. Are there any? Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
It is hard, is the honest answer.
Yeah.
How do you?
Good mental, good well-being practices. And I think that's, I think with our jobs, a lot of that is up to us once we leave the booth or leave the, wherever we are. But we definitely need leeway when we're in it. So if that is an intense character, what does that mean on the breaks? Does that mean a private space that I can be where where other people are? Does that mean that I need more water to come to me? Does that mean that there needs to be more breath, that I need to not be listening to a group of developers talking about that because I can't go back to that space if it's...
Turning down the lights.
Turning down the lights. But yeah, in any acting game, they stay with you, and that's part of the practice to do it like throughout life, throughout life and career. I was just going to say, adding on really quickly to Kate's point before, also in terms of diversity, when things, I certainly need a specificity in all the researchers to really, really do their work, because when things are thrown on me at the time that should have been done, that should be more specific in diversity, that's in areas of diversity, that's when anxiety or stress or whatever, and then I'm like, I'm doing somebody else's job. So that's, again, something that should be put in practice beforehand. And that means that I can walk out of the studio a little bit and be like, oh, they had my back with that. I'm not carrying more than just my character.
I think that's really important. I think one thing about that, often there's a trend, especially at the moment, I think, to try and address real world issues in games using like an analogous, using like a mixed race alien species, you know what I mean? So that we don't have to talk about human beings, but we're using that to talk about race in a human context. But because there are no black, white, Asian, whatever people, then we feel comfortable to kind of be like, oh, we can discuss this now because we're not saying the actual words and talking about the actual races. But keep in mind that the people that you're asking to portray those things have still experienced those things and are aware that this is just an analogous situation to what they've experienced. So even if you are talking about, not using words that are based in what we traditionally understand as racism, if you're tackling a topic where you're asking somebody who has experienced that in the real world to jump into this analogous situation, understand that it's still the same thing. And so the way it's discussed and the way that you go about asking them to bring their real life experience to that, which is what essentially you are asking them to do, just an awareness of the fact that if you've had to employ them to do that, they might know more about it than you, or just a care in the way in which those types of scenes and those types of things are discussed. Something that I experience works on what you're talking about really is that I'm relatively like racially ambiguous. People don't know what race I am, which means that oftentimes I find myself in a booth watching someone realize I'm not the race they thought I was when they cast me, which is fine, but just be aware that if you're employing someone, I've had someone say to me, well, you're great because you could just be anything, which is a great thing to say to an actor, not a great thing to say to a black person. So yeah, and as we move forward and as we want to discuss these things and we want these issues to be at the forefront, that is absolutely the right thought process. But just be aware that just because we're in space and we're talking about the difference between green aliens and red aliens, it's still the same.
And a lot of the time, we may know what we need, so ask and respect that.
Because no one's ever trying to be difficult. No one's ever trying to. You want it to be as smooth as you want to cause as few problems as possible. That's always the goal: is to get in and out and be as smooth as you can. Because we care. Because that's why we're in the industry. Because we certainly care.
We want to tell your story,
and I want you to like me. Because I'm broken.
And hire me.
Thank you. I'm aware we are a couple of minutes over time.
Sorry, I hijacked your Q&A.
No.
No, it's very good. I'm glad we ended on that point. It's a pretty important mental well-being point. So, thank you all for joining us, and thank you very much to Doug, Rob, Jess and Alix.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to Kate.